All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into one of the most powerful forces in all of human history, and that's fear. We're going to look at how an entire nation can learn to suspect their own neighbors, and how the playbook for creating that paranoia back in the 1950s, well, it's still very much in use today. So I want you to picture the 1950s in America. And yeah, we think of the boodle skirts and the sock hops, but underneath all that shiny, happy stuff, there was this deep, simmering suspicion. This feeling that your neighbor, maybe your coworker, even someone in your own family, could be a secret enemy of the state. It's a huge question, isn't it? I mean, this kind of thing doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. A collective fear like this has to be built, piece by piece, until it starts to feel completely normal. So, how exactly did they pull it off? To really get our heads around this, we have to deconstruct it. We're going to break it down into the key ingredients, the things that were mixed together so expertly to create this potent nationwide atmosphere of paranoia. Okay, first, and this is probably the most important piece of the puzzle, you need an enemy. You have to give people a clear, identifiable target for all that anxiety. And this is where the whole us versus them idea becomes an incredibly powerful tool. There's actually a term for this, creating the other. It taps into this really primal, basic instinct we all have to define our own group by who we are not. See, when you label another group as fundamentally different, and more importantly, dangerous, it has this amazing effect. It instantly brings everyone else together against that common threat. And this just lays it out perfectly. In the 1950s, the us was so clearly defined, right? You were patriotic, loyal, safe, you were American. And them? Well, them was the communist. They were framed as traitors, as subversives, as fundamentally un-American. The lines were drawn in the sand, and you had to pick a side. There was no middle ground. But look, just creating an enemy isn't enough. That's just step one. Next, you have to make that threat feel real, constant, inescapable. You have to make the fear itself feel normal. And the number one tool for that job is propaganda. We're talking about information that's designed not just to inform you, but to persuade you, to push you in a certain direction. And during the Cold War, this stuff was everywhere. It was woven into the fabric of daily life. Do you remember Bert the Turtle? The famous duck and cover drills that they taught to kids in school were a masterclass in this. I mean, on the surface, it's a safety drill, right? But what it was really doing was teaching an entire generation that a massive existential threat could happen at any second. It normalized constant anxiety, and just as importantly, it taught obedience to authority in a time of crisis. Okay, so the third pillar in building this whole atmosphere with the language itself. Words weren't just words anymore, they were weapons. And they were chosen very carefully by people like Senator Joseph McCarthy to stir up fear and disgust. Let's just pause on this one word. Think about its power. McCarthy didn't say there was a disagreement in the government. He didn't say there was dissent. He used the word infestation. That frames his opponents not as people with different ideas, but as vermin, as a plague that needs to be wiped out. It's a really, really powerful dehumanizing tactic. And then you have a word like this. Betrayal. This one's personal. It's so emotionally charged, it doesn't attack an idea, it attacks a person's character, their loyalty, their very identity as an American. It's the kind of word that turns regular citizens into spies in their own towns, constantly looking for signs of treachery among their own friends and neighbors. So all this constant threat, it created this really fascinating and frankly tragic situation. And it all revolved around the simple act of staying silent. Because in this era, silence could be both a shield for people who were scared and a weapon for people who were brave. For the average person, silence was a shield. It just makes sense, right? In a culture of fear, the safest thing to do was to say nothing. Have no controversial opinions. Don't draw any attention to yourself. That way, you avoid the pointing finger of accusation. Your silence became a defense mechanism, born out of pure fear. But here's where it gets so interesting. Silence wasn't just a shield for the individual. At the very same time, another group was using a totally different kind of silence, one that acted as a shield for the entire country. The Navajo Code Talkers, these incredible heroes from World War II, stayed silent about their unbreakable code for decades. Their silence had nothing to do with personal safety. It was all about protecting a crucial national secret. And that's the whole paradox right here. On one side, you have a silence that was forced on people. It was isolating, and it was all motivated by fear, and the only thing it really accomplished was shutting down dissent. But on the other side, you have this strategic, unifying silence that was motivated by duty and patriotism, and its outcome was protecting national security. The same exact action, keeping quiet, but with completely different roots and results. So, why does any of this from the 1950s matter today? Because these patterns, creating an other, using propaganda, wielding language as a weapon, they aren't just relics of the past. The mechanics of a witch hunt, well, they're timeless. And that really brings us to the big question for all of us right now. The patterns are the same. Define an enemy, spread the fear, and weaponize the language. So if the first step is always to manufacture an enemy, who's being cast as the other in our world today? That's something to think about.